Yes, the sounder is up and on and testing 1, 2, 3. Ladies and gentlemen, you are invited. You are in tune, in touch with interesting ideas. My name is Stan Husted, and we're here to help you have a little greater insight, perhaps some new ideas, increase the amount of influence you have, maybe even give you a way to make an impact in the world. And then, as you will discover in our coaching experiences, it's always about greater income, but it's not about just money. It's about all of the good things that can come into your life when you start doing some of the right and perhaps even risky things. And my title is exactly right. If you want to find out what's wrong with the USA, you probably need to go to Washington, D.C. But if you want to find out what is right with America and what can be right with the world, you go to a place like the White Stallion Ranch in Tucson, Arizona, where we've been hanging out, an old homestead for me, but we've been spending the last week reacquainting ourselves with this wonderful organization, producing more and new podcasts to help people understand how they can make the most of their life and their business. And so we are back for another program. Now, I'm going to tell you the key to the White Stallion Ranch, and about the White Stallion way of life, and about the cowboy ethos in a simple sign that's right here, right next to the livery stable, right next to the corral. So when you take that risk of getting on, saddling up, and riding a horse, maybe even for the first time, you are involved in what is truly life. So, why don't you join me? I'll show you the sign. I'll even read it out for you. And we'll talk about that. I'm Stan Husted, Interesting Ideas, and the program begins right now. And here we go. Now, here's that sign. And just imagine you're seeing this little sign. It's with the corral in the background and the horses munching on their hay, getting ready, their oats, getting ready to work. You see, the horses, to have a place on the ranch, like everybody else, the horses have to do work. They don't get to just kind of, ramble around the corral and eat the hay and eat the grass. They have to go to work. That's what they do, and they have to do it quite well. So let's find out what we can learn from them. Here's what it says. Tennis is a sport. Chess is a game. Horseback riding is an adventure. Here's the definition of an adventure. An activity with an uncertain outcome, generally including fun and risk-taking. An exciting or remarkable experience. Your adventure begins the moment you enter the world of horses and cowboys. That's right. It's an adventure. Like I pointed out the other day, the woman who had never had this experience, as we were kind of having, getting together, having a little bit of a libation before we go to a wonderful dinner, and my wife asked her and said, what did you do? She said, what happened to you at White Stallion? And she said, I became brave. And she described the fact that she had gone on a horse ride and done some things she was kind of scared to do. But unlike most things in her life when she was scared or frightened, she just went right through it. And now, her life, in some small way, has changed. And so that's why I encourage you to understand what this is all about. Now, there's something else. One of the young leaders of the Cowboy Dude Ranch Association. Actually, they when they put their organization together some 100 years ago, they were meant to get the best guest and dude ranches together, and there's all kinds of them. But this was a group of select people who wanted to make sure that when they recommended people to, the greenhorns or the people out there who didn't know much about ranching and cowboys, that they would have a good experience, because the men and women of the Dude Ranch Association are people who have qualified. They've been highly vetted, and you know that if you're dealing with a DRA guest ranch, you're dealing with one of the best, and they'll make sure that the experience works for you. But the young woman in charge, she said something like this. As she grew up on a ranch, she said, "You know what? My father used to say that, horseback riding is a sport. It's the only sport where the ball has a mind of its own." And what a wonderful description of just exactly what this can be about. So I just simply want to encourage you. Right now, the other day, just last night, there I found a family, a young family, and 4 young children. And they weren't on their typical vacation. They made it an entire family adventure, from a very young one to a little bit older, to a little bit older, to a little bit older, but they still would qualify as children. And they were making this a family learning, growing, fun experience. And many times you can go on a vacation and the children will have no memory of it. Well, a motel is a motel, a swimming pool is a swimming pool, a hotel is a room. Perhaps maybe we went on some rides, maybe we did some things, but the adventure that you will have at a guest dude ranch is one of a kind. As I said about the White Stallion, there's no place just like that place, exactly like that place, but there are a lot of places where you can have that experience. But let's go back to that sign again. What we need to do, and in fact what we're going to try and do, and I just wanted to share this with you, while I was here in Arizona talking to a number of the men and women who make up the Dude Ranch community, I said, what we need to do is something that a pastor friend of mine, a priest, Richard Rohr, has said would be very, very helpful. In fact, what he points out is that part of the problem that we're having in the world today is that we've got scads of young men, most of them on the streets of our inner cities, and oftentimes they do not have the mentoring and the manhood example that might be good for them. And so they find their adventure being in gangs. That's where they do their adventuring. And if we could take these young boys, maybe younger men, and take them out and put them on a Dude Ranch experience, and we would let them know that there are certain ways that if you want to be a cowboy, you have to behave. And as Richard Rohr says, we don't initiate our young men anymore. And he said every culture has had traditionally a way, particularly for young men and sometimes for young women, the coming out, of introducing them to adulthood and then holding them responsible to it. Obviously, the many young braves, and if they wanted to be a warrior in many of the Native American cultures, went on the vision quest, and it was dangerous. It could be very dangerous. But that was their initiation into manhood, into being a full man member of the tribe, of the community. And that's all over the African cultures, the initiations of young boys into being young men and being leaders in their community. We oftentimes had the Eagle Scout, and of course a lot of the Boy Scout and the Girl Scout movement is still alive, but certainly not with the power and influence that it once had. Sometimes what the church provided in confirmation or first communion, and of course our Jewish friends still practice with great fanfare the bar mitzvah, the bar mitzvah, which is simply saying to you, hey, You now have the responsibilities and the opportunities to be adults. So act like it. Be it. Now, what we would do is one of the things that the young cowboy always wants is, first of all, you have to pass the test. You're going to learn that if you do carry a firearm, you know how to carry it responsibly. You're going to know how to handle yourself around strange situations. And by the way, young man, you're going to learn to tip your hat to the ladies because always, 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 we deal strongly with the cowboy if he doesn't honor all women. There's a way that you treat a woman, and don't violate it. And if you kind of pass that orientation, we'll take you out and we'll find you a nice hat. We'll shape it just for you. And then we'll give you a belt buckle. A belt buckle. And you wear that belt buckle with pride, because that means you actually accomplished something. You did something. You did something, you did it well. And now you have both the opportunity and the responsibility to wear your custom hat, find yourself a good pair of boots, wear your belt buckle, and act like it. Be a cowboy. Now, a number of people are saying, what about that old word? Isn't that a cowgirl? Well, my favorite story is actually one that a cowgirl told me, and she told it in a magazine called A Cowgirl. And it turns out she's not a girl at all. It was a wonderful woman of the West. Probably in her, she would say, I've probably been around for a little over a half century, maybe even more than a little. And she has a beautiful horse. She has some of the beautiful Western jewelry and some of the clothing and the traditional Western furniture and Western jewelry of the turquoise and the silver and many of those. That's a part of the deal. It's part of the outfit. The nice thing of being a cowboy is you have a unique uniform that you can wear. And in the interview, someone asked her, said, well, you keep calling yourself a cowboy. And he said, don't you mean cowgirl? And she said, no. You have to remember that cowboy is not a gender deal. It's a state of mind. It's a state of mind. We need a lot more work on the state of mind, the state of spirit, kind of the view of life. And as somebody pointed out, those of us who are more than a half century of age, many times remember that as children, we were exposed to not stories of lawyers on TV or just even celebrities, and not necessarily nearly all of the baseball and athletic players, but we did. But please keep in mind, when we were talking about Stan Musial and people like that, we were talking about real people of character. And the early Saturday morning dramas on television, we were given a morality play. There were people who were bad, and there were people who took care of the bad people. Seldom, if ever, did they actually kill anybody. But they could wound them. They were good enough shots that they could put a slug in their arm and knock them off the horse and then wrap them up and bring them into jail. But it was about the fact that we are all challenged to be good and to care for and serve others and rescue others. And those are the kinds of stories and plays that we were exposed to. Well, I'm reminiscing a great deal, but I hope that it has touched a nerve, as I say, perhaps stirred your mind, moved your spirit, and touched your heart. But the reason I'm doing this is one of the things that I have put together is the idea that now men and women who care deeply, perhaps about those boys in the hood, could there be a way where we could start a movement to get them into a healthy adventure, to get them involved? Cowboy Spirit USA and a number of fine ranch owners cowboys of many experience, and most of them men and women of the Spirit. Deep faith. When you're out on the range, you look up in the sky and you know the dangers are there and the opportunities are there. It kind of reminds you that you're kind of in a small place in terms of a much bigger place. And perhaps that'll remind you is that the cowboy oftentimes looks up and actually says a little bit of a cowboy prayer. I'm Stan Houston. These are interesting ideas. If you think more about this, get back to me. We'll be back. If anything I've said today in these 15 minutes has done that, said, there's something about what you've said. I think it's time for me and my family to have that kind of an experience. And maybe I'm an older person, like you, Stan. And you think, maybe that's the one experience I haven't had. I've gone to a lot of places and I've gone to a lot of stages in my own life, and we've been to some of the great places, but, we've never been to a dude ranch. And I think they would take me on, and I know they would. And I'd be more than happy to recommend you to people at the Dude Ranch Association and other people and places that can make you. And by the way, Grandma and Grandpa, you would be a hero, perhaps even to your children, if you decide, what, Grandma and Grandpa, what we're going to do? We're going to take the grandkids, and we'll take them to a guest ranch, a dude ranch, and we'll be with them as they have their first experience there and perhaps learn how to ride. I still remember, even on my first cruise, where as I was going down, sitting next to a gentleman, and of course our story started, and he just simply said, I checked with my financial advisor, and I found a way. I'm taking all 4 of my children and my 12 grandchildren with the 13th on the way, and we're going to have a cruise together, something that they can remember. And this would be, I think, perhaps even more challenging and perhaps even more memorable than a cruise. They're both good and great for you. But why don't you reach out to me at stanhouston@gmail.com, stanhouston@gmail.com, and I'll put you in touch with the Dude Ranch Association. I'll put you in touch with White Stallion. And if they don't have the right situation for you, these guys aren't competitors. They're colleagues. They'll say, you know what, my friend, he's got a ranch that would suit you and your family maybe just a little bit better, because that's how they operate. They operate together. It's not a world where we're trying to put somebody else out of business or compete for market share. What we have is good. And when the customer is first, then everybody is first. So, best and blessings to you. Take care. This is something to think about this weekend, so make sure you do. And it may mean that this next coming year will be one of the best years ever, despite even the mess up in Washington and maybe even some recessionary times. It might be the year to remember. 22, something we did that was really good for me and you. Best and blessings, a cowboy blessings to you, a tip of the hat to you, and bye for now.